cybersecurity or security in general. And there has been studies that show our churches are being targeted because we have, we first of all, we have a list of a lot of individuals, as well as we have some financial information. And so a lot of our churches are being held hostage, with some of the cyber thieves that are out there. So this lunch and learn is timely. I wanted to start the year off with this lunch and learn so that everybody can get their things in order. And I looked around and I had to find an absolute expert at this, and we have found one. He happens to be a dear brother of mine, and his name is Robert Lee. We'll call him Rob. And Rob has, I don't know what these letters mean, but I'm gonna read them off, and then Rob could tell us afterwards. But Robert has a CISSP-ISSEP. He has a CGRC, a CEH, and so I'll let him tell him at the end. Rob is a cybersecurity professional with over 30 years of experience in security network operations, cybersecurity, program management. He specializes in network designs, vulnerability assessments, IT infrastructure management, and security authorization processes. As the president of RL Goodworks LLC, Robert provides cybersecurity consulting services to various sectors, including the federal government, the Department of Defense, and the civil sector. He is certified instructor for risk management framework, course taught at institutions like the Army Command General Staff College and National Defense University. Robert is proficient in NIST SP 800 series guidance and international security standards such as ISO IEC 2007-001 and ISO IEC 27005, which are critical for government level security. Robert is a U.S. Army veteran with degrees in electrical engineering, information systems, holds an ISC2 certification, and has served in Computer Security Institute Advisory Council. He is also actively involved in the community security, serving as the commission for the Prince George County Commission for Youth, Children, and Families, and as a member of the FBI Citizens Academy. Beyond his professional career, Robert also serves as a youth minister and mentor. So I want to welcome you, Rob. I want you to tell us what these, before we get into the other part, I want you to tell us what these initials mean.
Paul, I don't think I've ever had anyone read my entire bio.
I always do.
That's pretty interesting, man. I'm impressed, man. Keep going, man. Keep going. A lot of those are very specific. Most of my work is with the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. And so for the civilian workforce and military workforce, they require certain industry certifications. It's somewhat similar to someone who's an accountant. And on certain levels, you would be required to have your CPA. So a lot of those are technology-based certifications, but also there's a lot of legalese in terms of what you can do and what the expectations are from a legal perspective. So that's
okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, let's go ahead and get started. But before I like to jump in, I like to sort of get a little sense of who you are for the audience. So I'm going to ask you a few quick questions and ask you to answer those. With all your experience, what is the most interesting or unexpected cybersecurity challenge you've faced?
Yeah, it's kind of easy, right? We all remember Y2K, and I was in the
I don't know. Alana's
field.
pretty young. Alana's pretty young. So that might.
Yeah. So, I was working for Department of Defense at the time. And Y2K if you're not familiar with it, a lot of our computers were designed in 1960, 1970s. And so the coding was set to expire in 1999. So when the clock turned to 2000, no one knew what would happen to some of the computers. So if you think about it, all of our satellites, all of our aircraft, our electrical grid, everything uses some type of database and some type of coding. And it was just common practice to set the timer at 1999. And so as soon as the clock um, would turn to the year 2000, we had no idea of what would happen. And so I was working in a sensitive site here in DC with hundreds of monitors, with a whole bunch of people just counting down, looking at military bases, looking at aircraft, looking at wherever our troops were deployed to see what would stop. And fortunately, none of the critical systems timed out. But it was really interesting. We were doing analysis, and the government
Mhm.
spent millions of money before Y2K trying to predict what would happen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was working in the insurance industry at the time, and we made hundreds of millions of dollars selling insurance because nothing happened. So,
yeah,
so we made all
yeah,
this money, and
yep,
and nothing really happened.
yep.
So yeah,
But I
yeah,
think that scenario, Paul, really kind of opened the door, especially in the US, in terms of how much the US government and US citizens depend on the internet. We're
yeah.
the only country that uses the internet for all of our government applications,
Oh wow.
personal banking. In communist countries, Russia, you have to apply to use the internet. There is no free
Oh wow.
internet email and
I didn't
things
know
like
that.
that. Yeah, the US is open and free. And that's why we are the country that's most targeted.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's interesting. But what is your favorite cybersecurity tool that you use?
Um, there's so many, but simplistically, I like what I call two-factor authentication. The fact that you log on to
That's
your
so
bank.
funny. Rob is bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. There's
Uh-huh.
so many tools that are more complex, but
Uh-huh.
for the everyday citizen, the fact
Right.
that I can log on to my bank and it says, hey, and it
Yeah.
sends a text to my cell phone that only I know. And that way I can validate and confirm so
Right.
that I can have access to my resources.
So it's so funny. I'm speaking to everybody that Rob is saying that because Rob is a part of a group of us. There's six of us. We call ourselves the Six Servants. We're all brothers. We're super close. And Rob, all of us we have expertise in different areas. And Rob posted something, I want to say 8 months ago. And he said, hey, are you guys all you said multi factor, authentic? I don't know what you said. And I was like, I don't think I am. So I texted Rob. Rob said, yeah, you need to do this, do this. So I did it. So about 2 weeks ago, I'm traveling, I'm visit, I get this email from Chase because I changed. I'm now all multi factored authenticated, and so Chase sends me this text and says, "Are you at Best Buy buying something for $1,600?" I'm like, "No, I'm not at Best Buy." And it was all because Rob told us to put that in place, and so it caught that. If I didn't have that in place, it wouldn't have caught that, and I would have been, dealing with, a charge. So that's a definitely a very powerful tool. Um, what book would you recommend, Rob, those that are interested in cybersecurity to read right now?
Yeah, Paul, I could not recommend a book, and it really depends on your interests. Like I
Right,
talk to people all the time about getting into the cybersecurity field, and it's so robust. Are you technical? Are you an engineer? Are
right.
you legal? Are you an attorney? There's a privacy piece. So I would say it really depends on your interests. What
What
interests
about
you?
you? Are there any, Rob? Are there any YouTube influencers that talk about it? Do you talk about it online? Are there places
Um,
for people to go?
Yeah, it is. And so again, I would Google based on your preference.
Got it.
There's so much free content that's out there. it would be unfair for me to
Go in one
recommend a book
direction. That
for you to
makes
go out
sense.
and purchase.
That's
Yeah.
fair. And then one last one before we jump into the issues about churches. Do you have any career advice? What's the best career advice you've received while you were doing what you were doing?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a good buddy of mine. Um, in my church, there was a deacon who adopted me, and he was really like a father to me. We had a 30 plus year relationship, and he passed away about 2 years ago. And his name was Deacon Robert Williams. And he was sharing with me years ago this story about he enlisted in the Navy in 1949, and he was from Louisiana. And so I was talking to him and I asked him, I said, what was race relationship like, being on a ship with all of these sailors? And so he went on to explain to me, he said, well, he said all of the other black sailors spent a lot of time um, trying to play up to the white sailors. He said, Rob, I didn't do any of that. He said, I didn't sing or dance. I just picked the cotton. And when he said that, I was kind of offended. I was like, man, what do give me some real good advice. But as my career has progressed, the agencies and places that I
Uh-huh.
work, I was typically the only person of color. And so I learned just to be a subject matter expert at my job and not to play games. But when I
Uh-huh.
show up, I'm professional. I don't hang out with folks at work. I don't go to happy hour with folks at work. I I don't sing or dance. I just pick the cotton. I just do my job at a very high level.
Okay. That's good. That's especially in security. That's probably more important. Maybe even in HR, something similar to HR. That's great advice. So let's go ahead and jump in. Um, can How would you define cybersecurity?
Yeah, cybersecurity gets a lot of publicity, but cybersecurity holistically is about an organization or person, your mission, and the information or data that you use to conduct your business. So if I'm the federal government, if I'm the IRS, my mission is providing services to the taxpayers. The data that I'm concerned about would be those systems that process, store, and transmit user information. So with our churches or our nonprofits, what are your critical systems? Who are your donors? What information do you need to successfully operate your business? And so, in my opinion, that's cybersecurity. Forget about all the technologies, forget about what you hear about artificial intelligence. They all play a role, but until you're able as an individual, as a business owner, as a nonprofit, and as a church, until you are able to properly identify and protect your assets, your resources, and the data that you need to sustain your business.
Okay, that's very good. It's a very robust answer. What would you say Black churches or churches in general, um, or even nonprofits are most vulnerable of to protect? Like if you said, "This is what I want you to do first," what would that be?
Yeah, I think, think about it. Our churches, our nonprofits are typically volunteer based, right? So there's nothing wrong with volunteers, but when it comes to my critical and sensitive data, I need people who are trained and I need the organization to go ahead and spend the time and spend the money to make sure that you're protecting your data. So conversely, look at individuals. We have our banking accounts and we have all of our accounts that we log on to. And typically, it's human nature to use the same username and password
Yeah,
across the
I know
board,
what
right?
Rob's going to say next.
Yeah,
Go
that's
ahead.
pretty late. That's
Yeah,
okay. And that's lazy. But if I'm a hacker and I'm stalking you, I'm checking out your bank account, I'm
yeah.
checking out your Target account, and I'm going to play with my keyboard. And when I find out that you got one across the board, so my
Hmm.
point is be cognizant and be aware of your cyber footprint.
Hmm.
I guarantee you, everyone on this line, your information, your bank account, where you live, your driving license is in the dark web. someone can get to it. It's just out there floating. Now, how they
Mm.
manipulate it is really on you.
Hmm.
So if one day I'm targeting, I see Reginald Davis and I'm checking out where he lives and I'm checking out that he's got a Ring camera and I see his movements and I see what he looks like. And now I got a hold of his driver's license. So now I pretty much know your pattern and I'm logging on to your bank accounts. Oh my God, he just changed his password. Now I got to start over again,
Hmm.
or I'm going to go find someone else like Gary Johnson who may not be as vigilant as changing his passwords, changing your footprint. So I change mine very frequently.
Yeah, and Rob, Rob, some of you that may have gotten on a little bit later, Rob is a brother of mine, and so we probably send each other a text, 2 or 3 times a day, every day, and so we're pretty tight. And so Rob is always giving us advice about which we take, but some of it is frustrating because, like I said, I'm lazy, and so Rob is like, "Yeah, you need to be changing your password. What is it? Every month? Is it every? What is it?"
I mean, 30 days is good.
Yeah, I'm like, so I guess what I'm saying is the people on this line, but this also goes back to the church as well. This means the churches should be changing their password at least pretty frequently. It should not be
Absolutely.
one password that you have, set it and forget it. It needs to be changing on a minimum quarterly basis, minimum.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that's the point that we're trying to make here. And so just keep that in mind as you're bringing in volunteers and having people log into your systems. You need to be changing. And then one of the things, so you all know that Alana and I, we're fundraisers. So what we do is we go out and we help churches fundraise. And one of the things that we're running into, this will shock you, Rob. Most of the CRMs, the customer relations management systems that are
Mhm.
being used at the churches, they don't have security levels. So when somebody enters the information into the CRM, everybody that has access to the CRM can see all the information. Is that
Yeah.
nuts?
Um, it's typical, right?
Yeah,
Because
but
again,
for
I'm
yeah,
talking about a volunteer
yeah,
organization or where my focus is the mission of the organization. So
yeah,
IT security is not what we're concerned about.
yeah. Yeah, but for us, so me coming from the nonprofit into the churches, churches are considered nonprofits, but coming from a small high school, we only had 300 students. And our CRM, it had multi-level
Yeah.
firewalls. Like
Right.
some people could just enter data. Some people could just so what I'm saying is the ones that churches are using are less than often than what even small nonprofits are using. So one of the things Alana and I are trying to do is we're trying to
I
create
like
an
that.
add-on CRM that is put together by a security company that churches can use to put firewalls up between the because that data needs to be collected. And when
Absolutely.
they have to change their CRM, it's a whole because you got to tell your congregate, hey, you can no
Yeah.
longer give us the money this way, and
Right.
it's a whole. You got to do a campaign.
Yeah. What that is, Paul, is when you set up those databases or those financial collection systems, it's called role-based access control,
Right,
RBAC. Most of those systems come with that. So if you're the church secretary, you should not have access to the financial system.
right.
And that's how you set up the system. If you're the pastor, should you have access to the finance and attendance system? You got to design the system to where you have that role-based access control put in place. And
Like,
so that
well, I'll say this,
minimizes.
Rob. One of the biggest CRMs out there in terms of community or congregant donations is PushPay. PushPay
Mhm.
is one of the largest ones out there that a lot of the churches use. I wonder
Yeah.
how many online use it. They actually don't have. In fact, we're in conversations with them, making them fit right, come up with a workaround that limits people access to donor information.
Yeah.
They don't even one another company, Give Butter, just won an award for being one of the best. see nonprofit CR, guess what? They don't have,
Yeah.
firewall level. So it's not something that's already out. It should be, but it's just not.
Paul, you're looking at it from a proactive and a sensible perspective, right? So if think about the background of those individuals who developed that software,
Right.
they're thinking about the mission and what it does. Who thinks
Right.
about security? One of the things so I've been in cybersecurity again over 30 years. And early on, look, cybersecurity has only become cool in the last 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, we were the guys unplugging the routers and disconnecting
Right.
connectivity and things like that. It was a thankless job. But
Mm-hmm.
because it's become more public, and because, again, like I said at the onset, the US is the country that does all of their business on the internet. It's all about making the money. So I will design something to you and take your money and shift it to your donors. But who's going to think about security?
Yeah.
Because there's an extra cost. Just like I said to you, Paul, hey man, you've got a large footprint on social media. You might want to start changing your password. You're like, man, I'm not talking to you anymore. But it's that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that mindset.
Yeah. That's definitely to the point. Let me ask you a question. Um, in specifics, what are you answered it generally, but I want to get a little more specific for the churches. What are the main cybersecurity threats churches face, particularly regarding finance protection? What is that?
So I think, again, I got to come from the baseline. Typically, we have a volunteer base. When I started, you said, hey, Rob, what are all those certifications? Those certification means that I've been trained in a
Mm-hmm.
particular area to protect data. So I think our churches should do that,
Yeah.
right? There's nothing wrong with training your volunteers. Look, I live here in Prince George's County and I volunteer at our school system. Just to go into the schools, I have to get fingerprinted by the FBI
Mm-hmm.
because the county says our most valuable assets are our children. So
Right.
we
Right.
want to make sure that folks that are sitting around our children have at least there's some type of background check. So what's wrong with those individuals who
Yeah.
volunteer for your
Agreed.
nonprofits to get a background
So
check?
so so Rob, what are those training? What is the training like? Like, what do they go over?
I love it. That's a great question. I think I provided a toolkit for everyone, and there's a bunch of free websites. And where I'd like to start from organizations, I think every organization needs to have initial cybersecurity awareness. And you may have seen it. It's like things like phishing. If you get a suspicious email, um, click into the sender area and you'll see that it's a lot of alphabets and and
Doesn't make
and
sense.
nomenclature. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. That's a
Yeah.
phishing attack. So if you get that, someone already knows who you are and they're starting to profile you. They want your address book. They want to see who you send emails to, where you do your banking. They're checking you out.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Well, that's very helpful. Let me ask you, for churches with limited, technical knowledge and
Mhm.
resources, what immediate steps can they take to improve their cybersecurity?
I like that. The first thing would be what we have in our organizations called an information system security officer or an information steward. That means that that organization has taken time to identify their most critical data, whether it's financial or whether it's membership. And then we kind of backtrack and we say, okay, uh, Deacon Jerry is going to be responsible for all of the member data. He's the only one that's going to have access to it. And oh, by the way, we're going to make one person an alternate. So my point is the limit of access. One or two people should have access. On church after Sunday, there's only a small group of people that count the money. Not everybody can go and count the money. It's kind of the same thing. You
Yeah.
gotta identify what's sensitive and critical and make people responsible for it, and then get them the appropriate training. In that toolkit that I provided, there's a list of online free training that organizations can incorporate.
That's great. And just to the listeners, we will be providing that in our at the end of the the live. We'll put together a little recap, and we'll connect the toolkit that Rob put together for you all, which is fantastic. I want to do a quick poll of the people online, and so our master control Alex is going to put it up there. And basically, what I'm asking you is, does your church have cybersecurity protocols in place, and how confident are you in those protections? So go ahead and fill those out and let us know. We'll give it a couple minutes. And as people are filling it out, Rob, we'll keep going. Um, how can church leaders create a culture of cybersecurity awareness among their staff and volunteers? And I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, is there a person that should be in charge of cybersecurity?
Yeah. So in the corporate world, we have a chief information security officer, and that individual, based on the scope, the depth, how many employees, how vast the system are, then you have, you have policy people. A big part of cybersecurity is creating policy. On some of your jobs, you may have a requirement that your password must be 15 characters, uppercase, lowercase. Well, that's determined by the organization.
Ah,
Again, and so you got to have technical people and you have to have policy people. So for a small organization, I think it's appropriate to have what I call a information system security officer, or an ISSO, or system steward. One or two people who are technically savvy, who understand how that system works. And you can create policy based on what the system is used for and who the user community is.
no, that's helpful. Um, you know, uh, as we were preparing for this lunch and learn, I did a little research, and there have been several churches. You can, and the audience, you guys can go out and actually Google this. Have been caught up in ransomware,
Oh yeah.
where because churches have resources, and hackers know that, and they also know that churches don't often have cybersecurity protocols. But
Absolutely.
there was a one church that we identified. They got hit up for $280,000 and paid it
Yep.
because that they couldn't get their information.
Yep.
So what would your advice be, or is it the same about regarding ransomware and hackers that are just attacking that?
Yeah, hackers are going to hack. And if I get one thing across to everyone, is, again, the United States is free. We're open, our internet, the church is being on television, the church is streaming. You can't do that in other countries. So most of the folks that hack and conduct malicious activity are from outside the US. And it really started from a military perspective where they wanted to destroy the government. But they spent so much time looking at the American people and how free they are and how free we are, that hackers are making millions from stealing from our churches, from stealing from institutions, and then supporting the foreign governments. So my point is, the larger that you are on the internet, like if you're on church, I mean, you're streaming and you say, oh my God, thank you, congregation. We made $2 million last week. Man, I'm a hacker. I'm loving your church.
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
listen to the message and I'm tapping into your bank account. I'm saying
Yeah,
praise the Lord, and I'm taking
yeah.
all your money.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That
But
and
think
because
about how
that you
bold
bring
that
up
is.
you bring up a great point, because churches are actually, more out into, the public and seen than more than most other nonprofits. I mean, every
Absolutely.
one of them streaming once,
Yep.
every once a week.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
I'm
you can,
telling you, man, they don't pass the collection plate in other countries. So if
yeah,
I'm a hacker from Afghanistan,
yeah,
I see you passing the plate and people
yeah,
putting money in it. Oh man, I
yeah.
want your church.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. So Alex, can you bring up the results of the poll? Very confident, 20%. That's good. That's very good. Kind of confident, not so good. We're just getting started. That's a good thing. And we're not thought wait, we've not thought through yet, I think. So we've got 30% of those. So it looks like 80% of them need some adjustments, which is challenging. So really get on this, and we have to stop in the middle because our other brother from another mother has just jumped on the line. It's Pastor Rudy Ramos on the line, and how you doing, Rudy? Rudy, how are you
Doing
guys
great.
doing with cybersecurity out there?
We have the same challenges that everyone else around the country has. Those folk don't have any geographic boundaries. So
No.
we are here. And my apologies for being late. I had a call I had to finish up, but my team member Wesley Alford is on with me today, and just really grateful for uh, Paul, what you're doing, and we have
Oh,
literally the goat of security in Rob Lee with us
no
today.
Oh
question.
man, that's good, man. That sounds
But I'm
good.
gonna back out. But just great to be here and love y'all and thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Love you, brother. So that's such a good point that he's making. Because what Rudy's doing out in St. John's and uh, Bread of Life, they're doing big things, and they're doing big things publicly, and so they're a target. And so the point that Rob is making, all of us on this line, we're targets because we're out there more than most other nonprofits. So we really have to be having protocols that are in place. And if only 20% of us are doing that, that means 80% of us on this call are targets. I mean, everybody's a target, but the 80% are vulnerable targets. So we really need to be moving forward, with trying to tighten up what our cybersecurity is looking like. So let's keep going. I want to ask Rob, um, have you worked with institutions where they were having issues? You came in, made some adjustments, and the issues kind of went away. And can you tell us a little bit about that and what those steps took and how long they took, if it's a small organization?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of work in situations like that. This is kind of the rule of thumb about cybersecurity and protecting your data. Most people don't pay it any mind, any attention, don't give it any funds, any
Yeah.
resources until something bad happens, right? So I've had calls. I did some work for a state. I can't really say what state, but they make a lot of bourbon, and the state was getting hacked. Um,
I think at least Rudy, myself, and you have been there.
so the state and their various agencies, their healthcare, their
Right.
Treasury Department, Department of Health, they were losing money. And so, this is 15 years ago, where every government agency could not wait to get online to offer their citizens, to offer their community easy access of services and money. And because it's kind of a famous state, it was one of the states that was getting hacked. A lot of malicious activity was done. And so it was very simple. We set up monitoring devices. It was, it's a large state, so it was probably a $50,000, $60,000 investment. And what it did, the monitors showed access of unauthorized users and where they were coming from. The next phase, this is when organizations start doing things like username and passwords and making sure that authorized users had access to their systems. I spoke to you earlier about role-based access. only people, your secretary and everyone can use your system, but the secretary shouldn't have access to the finances. So
Yeah.
role-based access is very, very important. Come on, log on to the system. There's certain rights that different users, based on the reason that they need to use the system, that they should have.
So what are your thoughts about most of the churches that we're working with are medium sized, and some of them though are larger, and they actually have laptops that they use. And sometimes people bring in their own lap. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so laptops are cool because it cuts the burden and the cost down to the organization. Personal laptops. Can I bring my personal laptop to work? If I do that, like think about Rudy's church and all the staff that he has, it's cheaper for the church to allow users to bring in their own laptops. However, I have a policy, and my policy is I'm going to load a certain image on your laptop. So when you log on to the church, I know that this is Paul, and I can tell based on role-based access what you have access to. And I'm going to make you, like the government does, you're going to sign a telework agreement, meaning that the only time that you are authorized to log onto this system is between 8 and 5. And I'm going to have routers that's going to kick you off of the system
Okay.
on non-business hours. And if you log onto the system at midnight, then as a manager, I get a log and we're going to have a conversation. So we have all these tools in place, but now we have to humanly interact and make sure that we're following up and we're enforcing policy. Hey man, why are you logging on to the church at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you had work to do? Okay, let me see what files that you access. You know what? Your job doesn't require you to do that. And so I'm going to shut down your access. And a lot of those are part of the system. We just don't implement those controls.
Okay. I like that. That's good. Let me ask you another question, Rob. Um, you're going into a church that has hired you to come in and do, or I should say, maybe a region, maybe I guess they call it a conference. They come in, they've asked you to sort of help the local churches, tighten up their security. What are the first five things you talk about? What are the first five things you talk about?
Yeah, that's good stuff, Paul. So what I want to do, even though it's a church, right? For instance, let's use Rudy again and what we know. Churches have various missions. Membership, that's data, that's personal information. How do you get paid? How do you collect and exchange resources? Do you use credit cards? Because if you use credit cards, there is a government standard and regulation that you are required to protect MasterCard data. It's the PCI standard.
Yeah.
Right? So that church, now you need to show me that you have an expert on staff who's familiar with those PCI standards. So we're going to start with that individual. So
Mm-hmm.
again, what are your critical asset and resources, your members, your people, and your finances? What are your banking institutions? What kind of security do they use? Who has access? Does everyone in the church have debit cards? We're going to limit the number or the amount of exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, I used to work for a consulting company, and man, grandma said it was high cotton because the first day on the job, they gave you an American Express card for everybody.
Yeah.
People in the mailroom had American Express card, whether you traveled or not. Man, people were charging all kinds of stuff. It was the thing to do. But when you go back and do your due diligence, I want to protect and minimize the risk exposure of my organization. So
Mm-hmm.
how do I do that? I want to control who has access to my money and who has access and the ability to change my business processes. Only
Yeah,
a limited amount of people
that's
should
good
do that.
stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's really
cybersecurity
helpful.
and data protection should be a part of every staff meeting. every staff meeting, we should be doing lessons learned.
Yeah, that leads me right into my next question, and that would be, so say we go through your toolkit that you're providing,
Mhm.
say we take a couple courses on cybersecurity. We've assigned somebody to sort of be in charge of the cybersecurity at our church or
Mhm.
ministry. How do you um maintain, because we're talking about this in January.
Yep.
What about December? Are we still going to be doing what we're supposed to be doing? So how do we maintain updates? And you sort of said that we should be having a meeting, but how do we have matrix that are showing that we're actually doing the things, that instead of just going to a meeting and say, hey, yeah, nothing happened this week, we're good. How do we know we're doing what we're supposed to be doing?
That's good stuff, Paul. So one of the things that I really, really love about cybersecurity, because there's this mystique that it's all about technology. A lot of what we do in cybersecurity is physical security. I work with a lot of retired military personnel and police officers. I love working with police officers. Why? Because they are physically aware of their surroundings, what's going on, who looks suspicious. And
Mm-hmm.
they're always doing what we call continuous monitoring, right? So continuous monitoring. This was my security posture of the church last week. So my security posture means that during our church services in the course of the week, we had 2,000 people enter and access the church. Over the course of the month, I want to figure out what my baseline is. So do we average 3,000 people coming into the area a month? What do they look like? What are they doing? How are they engaging in the mission? And who's exchanging critical data and information? So, and that's ongoing. And you learn from that. You learn from, I remember sitting in a church finance meeting and they talked about how much money that the church lost on return checks. That's a cybersecurity issue,
Mm-hmm.
because if we keep losing money on return checks, we might need to create a policy where we're no longer taking checks,
Mm-hmm.
because the
Yeah.
risk goes to the church or the risk goes to the nonprofit. Thank you, baby, for your check, but if it's going to bounce, we don't need it.
Right, right. That's good. But to get a little more specific, Rob, in these meetings, like for example, let me just give you an example for fundraising. When I sit down in a fundraising meeting and I'm talking to my staff, I want to know a lot. So these are sort of, and they're little checkpoints, and they let me know what's actually happening without the person actually giving me the information, knowing that
Mhm.
I'm gonna learn from it. So for example, I will ask my staff, how many phone calls did you make? How many visits did you have? How many asks or solicitations did you have? How many yeses? How many? So I'm asking specific sort of data driven points. Are there any specific data driven points for cybersecurity that would be um, something like a checklist that you look at every quarter, and you look at, like, because for fundraising I'd be like, oh man, we're not doing well, or we're doing great, we're going to take 6 months off because we've already hit our goal. I mean,
Yeah,
so what are those metrics that a
yeah,
cybersecurity team could look at to monitor?
yeah. That's real good, Paul. So the cycle, if you will, of cybersecurity is pretty organic, right? Something bad is going to happen, and people don't realize that. So, and that something bad is measured in incidents. Did we have an incident?
Mm-hmm.
Did we have something happen to the nonprofit, to the church, to the
Or an
organization
attempt.
on attempt to
Yeah.
prevent us from doing our business?
Right.
But really, it's the incidents where we learn.
I
Attempts,
see.
could be, we've been to Rudy's church. An attempt could be somebody walking around on the outside scouting Rudy's church and trying to figure out where the access is. That's an attempt but it's unknown until it becomes an incident.
Right.
If someone throws a rock through the window, we look at that as an attempt to invade. Maybe their intent was to throw a rock, knowing that's going to take several days to get the window fixed. And so they're going to come back within that time period. So I want to know everything that's going on that can potentially harm my infrastructure. And we're going to think from a security perspective. Some say it's kind of paranoid, hey, someone's trying to harm us. But again, cybersecurity, in my experience, has only been based on, no one pays attention to us until something bad happens.
Yeah.
Listen to when you're
And
watching the
I want to
news at
stop you,
night.
Rob, just
Okay.
for a quick second. That's a big point, and that's
Yeah.
actually why we're having this lunch and learn. I do not want anyone on this call to wait until something bad happens, and then we got to get this stuff in place. That's the point. I really, really want people on this call to understand, get ahead of this. If it wasn't for me listening to Rob telling me about the multi-factored authentication, I would have been out of $1,600 a week ago hanging out with Rudy. So we got to get ahead of this. And so after this call, I want everybody to promise that you're going to go back and you're going to get some more information so you can protect the assets that you have now. We're not even talking about the assets you're going to have in the future, but now, because I'll tell you, I was working for another nonprofit and we had a breach and it became public. And yep. I won't even tell you what the loss was in terms of donor trust. We lost Absolutely. 25% of our donors. Yep. So it wasn't even just the loss that we had from the people that were getting the money, the ransomware, but it was also, we lost 25% of our donors. And we're talking about a $4 million organization.
Yeah. Reputation is big in cybersecurity. That's one of when I go to the table with organizations, whether it's the FBI or a small church, how important is it to protect your reputation? Therefore, how much are you willing to spend to protect your reputation? How much are you willing to invest to protect your reputation? A good friend of mine called me, it's been about a year ago, and her bank account was hacked. And she was really upset and she was mad at the bank until I asked her what her password was. And it was password 1234 with her name at the end.
Yeah.
That's easy. I'm hacking and I see your name and your
first
bank
thing
account.
You try.
Yeah, password. I'm gonna try your name. Yeah. I was like, really?
I gotta say,
you gonna blame that on the bank?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of often human nature. I got to say too, last night I walked into the yoga studio and you walk in, and it's a very relaxed environment. Yoga, how yoga is. And so
I don't,
these
Paul.
people, so the door opens, man. There's a counter there, and I walk in and I look down, and there's their keys, car keys, and phones just laying across the top. And the first thing that went through my mind was, Rob would lose his mind if he walked into this place. And I just went. So I walk out into the studio where people are stretching and getting ready for the class, and the teacher had already. And I stopped everybody. I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm getting ready to do a presentation tomorrow with a friend of mine, and I would be doing him injustice if I did not say this. Why is all they have to do is open the door. They don't even have to walk inside. Right. All they have to do is open the door, pull a bag out and swipe 6 phones and we're talking about, we're talking about BMWs, we're talking about Porsches. This is yoga in California. And they're like, oh, we just didn't even think about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? So the thought process has to get started, because you do not want to wait for it to happen to you, and then you're like, okay, well, now I'm going to be secure. Yeah, okay, now, but I mean, now you've had a whole traumatic situation already.
Absolutely. Paul, you said it's really a mindset. Respectfully, we've become very, very relaxed.
Yeah.
We love our social media, we love our online presence, we love our footprint. One of the things I get on my friends about is I go on Facebook and I find out that you're and your family in Colombia for 2 weeks. And you're telling the whole world, hey, I'm 2 plane rides away from home. Y'all come
Yeah.
on in, have fun. I'll be gone
Yeah.
for a while. Most recently, a lot of our professional athletes, their
Yeah.
homes have been broken into. Why? Because their schedule is on TV.
Yeah. They're
You know,
flossing. They're
yeah.
flossing in real
Well,
time.
they know where they're playing.
Yeah.
They know when they're not home. And these young athletes, a lot of them, they're young and single, so they got these big, nice Rudy
Yes.
homes with all kinds of jewelry and stuff laying around.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me say this. I want to open this up. Are there any questions or comments for Rob? I should have asked this earlier, but I want to make sure, I want to give the opportunity to the audience to ask um, uh, specific questions that you all may have. And there might have been something in the chat. I want to make sure, but you can take your phone out or the Zoom off mute and ask the question, or you can put it in the chat. And while we're waiting for that, Rob, I want to ask you, is there anything that I did? This is my favorite question, by the way. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, that you want to cover?
No, Paul, you obviously did your research. And for me, it's very helpful because there's this mystique about cybersecurity. People think it's all of this, high level technical stuff. It's really not. It's about individuals, organizations, their mission, their purpose, their finance, and the people that they support. And how do you manage that? How important is it for you to pay attention to what's most important about how your organization functions? Protecting that information,
Yeah.
changing your passwords, coming up with some policies. No, you nailed it, Paul.
Thank you, Rob. Rudy, you have a question
Yeah.
or comment?
Our friend Ramal had placed a question in the chat, and it really intrigued me. But Rob, do QR codes uh, pose like a certain challenge in terms of vulnerability
Oh, I see.
to the user?
That's a good question, Rudy.
Yeah, I didn't even see that. Yeah, that's good.
So the QR codes are a form of two-factor authentication, right? So whomever that sending organization is, you use your cell phone and you connect, and it's called handshake technology. It's saying, yep, you're expecting a certain signature that's in the QR code, and yes, I am the right individual. So I like that it's that whole two-factor authentication. So I don't believe that they pose a challenge. What I'm afraid is going to happen over time as people experiment with AI, then AI will get in and possibly be that middleman for nefarious use. So when someone wants to misuse technology, AI is in some cases allowing that to happen, but it's just not that advanced yet.
That's a great question. I didn't know that was from Ramal. Shayla Johnson asked a question. How can we go about setting up a firewall or cybersecurity measures for the electronic forms of payment for churches and church management systems? Do you want to read it again?
So, yeah, no, that's a good question. So, Ms. Johnson, I would say it depends on the software, the product, the tool that you're using. It should have a firewall. It should have certain capabilities. Unfortunately, a lot of times when our churches purchase these tools, someone from the company come, they install it, but they don't give you adequate training on all of the security controls and features that are built in. So if you're using a particular tool, I would demand that they spend some time with you on site showing you the security features so that you can protect those transactions.
So Shayla is saying it's push pay, which I spoke about a moment ago, Cash App, Give Livy. I've never heard of that one. Give Livy, Liffy, etc. So those are the things. So she's talking about a CRM. A Cash App is just an avenue to pay, and I'm not sure what Give Liffy is.
Yeah.
So those
But
are the things.
again, with any of those tools and applications that we bring into our organization and how we process data, you want to make sure that they're giving you the security features. It's just not smart to put products and tools in this climate that don't have any security features. It's like buying a car with no brakes. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But we have to ask, the consumer, we have to ask.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to tailor that application to fit your organization's needs.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I got to be honest with everybody on this line too. Sometimes it's more than asking. We went through this. I don't mind telling you. We have a client we were going through push pay, and we're moving over to push pay because the other CRM did not have several different levels of security to limit people to have access. And PushPay said, "Oh yeah, we have that." And then we ended up signing up with them, and we find out they don't have it. So now they have to come up with a work. It was just so we would sign up. And so you just need, so next time, make sure that when you're asking for something specific about security, get a demonstration, have them do the demonstration to show you how it limits other people's access to that information. Because we got bamboozled. And so we got to go through that. So great question by Gary Johnson. Love this question. He said, how safe is donating through Cash App? What a great question.
As long as you can confirm who you're sending the money to.
So Cash App itself is safe?
I'm okay. I'm not a big fan of it, right? Unless I can confirm who that phone number is coming from. Think about it from a handshake perspective. Can I say, hey, is this Paul on the other end? And
right.
and get some confirmation? Can you call me back? Can I verify who's on the other end?
That's a really good point, Rob. That's a good one. Yeah. Repeat that. That's a good point.
Yeah, use that handshake, even though it's through the transmission wires. If I call Rudy, I say, hey, Rudy, is this you? Hey, Rob, it's me. How you doing? Handshake. I want to confirm on the other end whom I'm sending that money to.
Now, then let me follow up with Gary's question. If you confirm it's Rudy, do you feel like Cash App is safe?
I do.
Okay. That's another point.
I do.
Okay,
but
good.
But check this out.
Go ahead.
And look at the policies of organizations like that. Cash App has a policy that if you send money to someone and it's not the intended user, that's on you.
Yeah, that's on you.
Right? So Cash App is saying, from a security perspective, I'm not offering you any assurance that we're transmitting your resources to the intended user. So I'm pretty, and so I would limit, how much can you afford to lose? Can I lose $10 or can I lose $500?
Yeah. Excellent question, Gary. Thank you for that. You as well, Shayla. Really appreciate it.
I would use Zelle. I think Zelle guarantees end user.
That's backed by banks, right?
Yep. As opposed to Cash App.
Here's one more question from Lee Diamond. What a great name. He should be an actor or something. Are there any third-party church management apps that you suggest using over others? What do you mean by that, Lee? Can you come on? Let me see if Lee's still here. Yeah, Lee. Turn your audio on and explain that.
Sure. first of all, Mr. Lee, thank you for your time. I want to tell you, I got invited to this meeting through your cousin Henry Newby here in Oklahoma
Okay.
City.
Okay.
Uh, that's my brother. We're pretty tight. So he invited me to this meeting. But church management apps such as Breeze Church Management that offer a lot of uh, these options, all-in-one options like text to give, online giving.
Oh
They
yeah.
have management software for your membership,
So this is
check-in,
a CRM,
check-outs.
it sounds like.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
Yeah, this is what is it? Customer relations management system.
Yeah. So I will say, Brother Diamond, since we're family, I'll go offline and I'll give you a call, or you can give me a call, and we can really look into it and evaluate it. Because what happens is, churches and nonprofit, you have a mission. I look at everything from a security perspective. My family and friends can tell you everywhere I go, my head is on a swivel. So I'm looking for protection. You're looking to minister and to collect money, and that's great. The best way is really to have someone assess and speak from a security perspective on how to protect your asset and resources. So we'll connect and we'll work through this process together. I'd be more than happy to do it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the questions, everyone. And I want to thank you, Rob, for taking your time to um, speak on this incredibly important uh, um, subject, because really, I just want our churches to make sure that we're ahead of this before we're behind it and dealing with it with a situation. Any last thoughts, Rob, before you go?
Yeah, I'm looking at Gary Johnson's questions about Cash App. Respectfully, I would go in and take a look at Cash App's policy and see if it makes you feel comfortable from a risk perspective. And have you had any incidents of members who you have not received their contributions through Cash App? And then you have a right to make that determination. If members are saying, hey, I sent it in and Cash App is not giving you the accounting, I would dish Cash App. It's going to be difficult for people who are comfortable and familiar with Cash App, but go with something that's going to get your money to you in a secure fashion.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Um, let me see. Anything else, Rob, before? Oh, so I want to also, before we go, I want to remind everybody that Rob has put together, graciously, I should say, a toolkit that will give everybody some information regarding on how to start, how to look at protocols, maybe a few websites to look at to get you started. And maybe he'll put his contact information in there. I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look at the toolkit. I know Rudy gives out his contact, but I don't know if Rob does. Rob is a little more security uh, focused, but yeah, we'll make sure to get that out, and we'll do a recap too of the lunch and learn, so everybody will have that. And I want to know, there might be one more question. Let me look what Rob. We have members who send their tithes through Cash App. Is there any security measures? Oh, so that was what you were responding to.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So there's Rob's contact information in the chat. I want to thank everybody for participating in this. And please reach out to Rob. He's very, very knowledgeable. He's very busy, but he will get back to you. And just thank you, Rob, for this. And I want to let you all know that we have another lunch and learn that's going to be happening February 12th. And you're not going to want to miss this either. This is on grant writing using
Mm.
AI. And this young lady, her name is Deepa. She's actually used some large language models to create an active AI that actually is focused on grant writing. And so you're gonna wanna. She has some pretty good successes as well, which surprised me even. And I have a couple questions for her as well in this meeting. So make sure you don't miss that. Um, as well. Anything else, Alana, that I should say before I let people go?
I had a
No,
great
nothing
time.
else.
Thank you. It's good stuff.
Thank you again. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rudy, my brother. And we will see everybody later. And I will be sending you guys updates as well as the notes from this with the toolkit. Be well, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.
All
Thanks
right.
again,
Thanks,
Rob.
Paul.
You
Absolutely.
killed
My
it.
pleasure. All right. Bye now.